When my grandma on my dad's side died, she left me, at 23, a part of her inheritance that was originally meant for my dad and brother. My brother got nothing. To understand why, here's some background. My brother and I never met our grandpa. Dad always talked about their rocky relationship, which led to them drifting apart before I was born. Dad met Mom at work years ago, and they fell in love and had my brother. But when they got married, Grandpa stopped talking to Dad. He didn't like Mom because she came from a different religious background, and Grandpa, being old-fashioned, disapproved. Dad distanced himself from Grandpa, and their strained relationship affected his bond with Grandma. I barely remember visiting Grandma until Grandpa passed away when I was 11. After that, Grandma reached out to Dad, and we all started spending more time with her. We celebrated Christmas and Thanksgiving at her place every year. She was the sweetest lady. It's puzzling why Dad never had a relationship with her before or why she didn't reach out to him sooner. She was a gentle soul, the kind who wouldn't harm a fly. Her happiness was contagious, and she lived life to the fullest, never taking herself too seriously. Her house always smelled of fresh bread, thanks to her amazing cinnamon buns. But something odd started happening as we grew older. When my brother asked to visit, she hesitated, but if I asked, she welcomed us right away. She even called to check if I was planning to visit soon. Then, at Christmas, I noticed I received better gifts and more cash in my cards than my brother did. Over time, this favoritism became more obvious. She attended my high school graduation but made excuses not to go to my brother's. She claimed she had a condo council meeting to attend, which seemed odd to me. The unease settled in my stomach every time she showed her preference for me over my brother. It weighed heavily on me, knowing he was being left out. As I enjoyed Grandma's love and generosity, my brother occasionally hinted at feeling left out. At first, I brushed it off as jealousy, but then I started noticing things too. Eventually, he stopped coming to our Christmas celebrations, opting to spend time with his girlfriend's family instead. I also observed that Grandma wasn't treating my mom fairly. Mom would get a generic store-bought card, while I received heartfelt handwritten letters full of love and admiration. Grandma always seemed busy when it came to Mom's or my brother's birthdays, but she'd drop everything for mine. One Christmas, I brought my girlfriend over, and Grandma gifted her earrings, but my brother's girlfriend never received so much as a card. It became increasingly obvious that Grandma was intentionally excluding my brother and Mom from her affections, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. One day, while sitting in her cozy kitchen, I finally mustered up the courage to bring it up. Maybe I was scared of the truth or worried about upsetting her. When I asked why she treated me differently from my brother, she brushed it off, saying it wasn't what I thought. But her vague response only made me more determined to understand. Sadly, Grandma passed away last year before I could delve deeper into the issue. After her funeral, I was called to meet with a lawyer, which struck me as odd. Dad thought it might be a formality but expected to hear from them soon. At the meeting, it was just me and her only living sibling. It was revealed that Grandma had left behind a significant inheritance, a house worth over $800,000. Along with over $300,000 in cash, heirlooms, and retirement savings. The inheritance was to be split equally between her brother and me, representing my dad's share. I asked the lawyer if there was some mistake, hoping there was, but he confirmed there wasn't. Grandma hadn't left anything for her son or my brother. I felt sick to my stomach. It didn't make sense. From what I saw, Grandma was close to my dad. They talked often. He visited her regularly, helped her in the garden, and with household chores. This just felt wrong. I had no idea how to break the news to my dad. I knew he'd be curious and would text me later to ask about the meeting. True to form, he texted that night, asking if everything was okay. I called him up and explained what had happened. When he heard, he protested and demanded answers. I didn't have any, so I gave him the lawyer's contact information. A few days later, I received a call from the same lawyer asking me to come in. I worried I might be in trouble for giving out his information, but when I arrived, he handed me a letter written by my grandma about 5 years ago. In the letter, she explained why my grandpa had disowned my dad and why she hadn't included her son and my brother in her inheritance. She revealed the shocking truth. My brother's biological father wasn't my dad. Apparently, my mom had cheated on him early in their relationship and got pregnant by someone else. Despite knowing this, my dad still chose to marry her after my brother was born. My grandparents warned him that if he married my mom, they'd cut him out of their will and any children they had, including my brother, who wasn't his biological child. My grandma explained that my grandpa wouldn't let her have any contact with her son, even though she desperately wanted to. This strained their relationship to the breaking point. They wanted to prove a point to my dad by cutting him out of the will, even though it meant sacrificing a relationship with me. She specifically addressed me in the letter, not mentioning my brother. This meant that my dad wasn't part of their business affairs either. They used to own several car washes, and originally, my dad was supposed to inherit them. But they sold them before Grandpa died just to spite him, cutting my dad out of everything. She revealed that my brother's dad was a guy named Philly, who my mom knew from church, so the different church thing was partly true. Grandma never trusted my mom after that and couldn't forgive her for hurting her son like that. When I came along and Grandma finally met me, it brought back years of guilt. She wanted to love me and give me everything she missed out on. It was like a second chance at having a son for her. But every time she looked at my brother, she was reminded of my mom's betrayal. She made a promise to Grandpa never to speak to us. But she couldn't help but be in my life, even though it meant breaking her promise to her husband. The letter mentioned that at the time, my brother didn't know that our dad isn't his biological father. This made me wonder if he still didn't know. Should I tell him? Why did Grandma suddenly leave this for me now? I need help figuring out what to do. Update 1. Alright, so a lot has been happening since my last update. And it seems like it's time to tell my brother everything. I've been struggling with the decision, losing sleep over it for a few days. I worry that if he doesn't already know, it could completely change how he sees our family. But I've made up my mind. I'm going to share the truth with him, along with my inheritance. First, I decided to talk to my dad about the letter and what I've learned. I wanted to have this conversation in private, so I asked him to come over to my place. I explained the contents of the letter and asked him why he chose to stay with Mom despite her infidelity. He opened up, saying he knew about Mom's actions but decided to stay because he loved her, regardless of what happened with my brother's birth. He made it clear that he accepted my brother as his own from the moment he held him, and he'd continue to do so, no matter what. Despite his parents cutting him off and trying to teach him a lesson, he learned the importance of giving people second chances. After my mom got pregnant with my brother, her religious family disowned her because of premarital sex. My dad explained that she had nowhere to turn, and he couldn't just leave her like that. He acknowledged her mistake, but chose to look beyond it, committing to building a family with her. They worked hard on their relationship, attending couples therapy and rebuilding trust. Despite my grandma's judgment, my mom remained loyal. I asked if my brother knew the truth, and my dad said he didn't. I told him I planned to talk to Mom and give them a week to tell my brother before I did. I made it clear that if they didn't tell him, I wouldn't split my inheritance with him. Dad got upset, saying it wasn't my place to reveal the secret and that technically, the inheritance wasn't mine to distribute. I insisted on the 7-day deadline and said I'd only split the inheritance with my brother if they told him. Dad warned me not to interfere in their family matters and threatened to withhold my inheritance as leverage. He stressed that it was their responsibility to handle the situation with my brother and urged me to reconsider my stance, highlighting the potential consequences of getting involved. Despite my dad's objections, I stood my ground and reiterated my decision. Within that week, he texted me, attempting to persuade me to reconsider. He argued that it would be too shocking for my brother to hear the truth from me and that it would devastate him. I acknowledged that it would be a lot for my brother to process, but insisted that he deserved to know and should hear it from our parents. When I mentioned to my dad that Mom wasn't ready to tell my brother, he explained that she feared losing their relationship if he disowned her. I empathized but maintained that it wasn't my problem and gave her 2 days to figure it out. The next day, Mom came over, visibly upset. I gave her the same ultimatum, and she tried to plead with me, explaining the weight of the secret and her guilt. I countered, emphasizing that I was only seeking to reveal the truth. I explained the consequences. If they told my brother, Dad would receive a portion of the inheritance, but if not, it would all go to my brother. Mom accused me of being greedy and selfish, claiming that I just wanted to keep the money for myself. I defended my position, pointing out that I was willing to share the inheritance with both Dad and my brother. Then they threatened legal action, saying they'd challenge how the estate was being administered if I went ahead and told my brother. Unfazed, I contacted the lawyer, who confirmed that they had no legal standing, as Grandma's wishes were clear in her handwritten letter to me. For the next 2 days, I received calls and texts from both of them, pleading with me not to say anything. The day finally arrived, and I asked my brother to meet me at our family home. As we entered, our parents were sitting in the kitchen, looking surprised, their jaws dropping when they saw us. I told my brother that our parents had something important to tell him. He seemed puzzled, and my dad got up, threatening me. I gave them one last chance, but my dad urged me not to go through with it. Ignoring his plea, I asked my brother to sit down and then proceeded to tell him everything, even handing him the letter from Grandma. He listened in shock, and I could see the devastation in his eyes. My heart broke for him. Mom tried to speak, but my brother cut her off, his voice trembling as he demanded answers about the lies they had told him his whole life. Mom started crying, apologizing, and trying to justify her actions, but my brother wasn't having it. He stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair, and said he needed time alone to process everything. He walked out to the front of the house, and I followed him. We sat on the lawn crying together. I assured him that I would share my inheritance with him. I knew he had been struggling and had dreams of starting his own business and marrying his longtime girlfriend. They wanted to buy a house and start a family, and the amount I would receive was more than I needed. Here's the latest update. After thinking it over, I believe Grandma didn't just want me to keep the money for myself. She probably only included me and her brother in the will to honor a promise to Grandpa. Maybe she kept the letter because she knew I'd do the right thing with the money when the time came, so I gave half of what I got to my brother. He's using it to buy his first home with his fiancée. Dad tried to start a lawsuit, but it got thrown out. My brother isn't talking to our parents right now. The only communication I've had with them has been through legal channels and a third party. Anyway, that's where things stand. I like to think that Grandma maybe had a change of heart in the end and felt bad about how she treated my brother. I hope the money he got can somehow make up for all of that.